Have you ever sat down at a restaurant, ready to order, and found you have demolished a basket of bread before the server even comes back? Today, we're ranking America's most famous chain restaurant bread offerings from absolute worst to carb-loading perfection. Not by how photogenic they look on Instagram or how many locations serve them, but by what actually matters: flavor, texture, temperature, and whether you'll secretly ask for thirds. So grab your butter knife because we're about to slice through 12 legendary bread baskets. Taking last place is Longhorn's honey wheat loaf, the bread that's perfectly fine when it's fresh, but turns into a doorstop the moment it cools. This dense, slightly sweet loaf gets served warm with butter at every table, and when it first arrives, you'll think it's decent enough. The honey wheat flavor hits that sweet spot between savory dinner bread and dessert, and the butter melts beautifully into the warm crumb. The problem is, you have to physically saw through the loaf with your steak knife, leaving you wondering if someone microwaved yesterday's batch and called it fresh. Even professional food reviewers who've done side-by-side steakhouse bread comparisons consistently rank Longhorn's loaf below competitors for being denser and less sweet than it should be. The texture feels more compressed than fluffy, more utilitarian than indulgent. Longhorn has been serving bread as part of their steakhouse experience for years. And while it fulfills the basic requirement of bread on the table, it never transcends into something memorable. When your dinner roll requires effort to chew and lacks the pillowy softness that makes great bread disappear effortlessly, you've got a problem. This loaf ranks dead last because in the world of complimentary restaurant bread, meh is the kiss of death. You want bread that makes you reach for seconds, not bread that makes you reach for water? Bonefish Grill slides into second to last with their complimentary white loaf and garlicky herb oil dip, the definition of perfectly nice but utterly forgettable. This straightforward bread service shows up at every table with a white loaf that tastes like it came from a decent bakery, paired with an herb-infused olive oil that does most of the heavy lifting. The bread itself brings nothing special to the party. It's soft, white, and mild, essentially a vehicle for that herb oil rather than something you'd crave on its own. The dip deserves most of the credit here. Garlic forward with Italian herbs that make each bite taste like you're trying to recreate an Olive Garden experience in your head. When people post copycat recipes for Bonefish bread, they're really posting recipes for the oil blend, because nobody's chasing down the secret to generic white bread. Bonefish standardized this bread service across all locations as a complimentary table starter, but standardization doesn't equal excellence. The experience relies entirely on a generous pour of that herb oil and catching the bread fresh from the oven. Miss either of those elements, and you're left with forgettable white bread and calories. This ranks near the bottom because house bread plus oil isn't a strategy, it's a placeholder. When the most interesting thing about your bread is what you dip it into, you haven't created a bread legend. You've created a condiment delivery system. Panera's sourdough lands at number 10 as the chain restaurant bread with the biggest gap between reputation and reality. This is Panera Bread we're talking about, a company that literally has bread in its name and traces its DNA back to St. Louis Bread Company in 1987, where they developed the sourdough starter still used today. The sourdough baguette served as a side, or transformed into their famous bread bowl, has become an American dining icon. That bread bowl deserves its legendary status. Few chains have embedded themselves into pop culture, like Panera managed with soup in a sourdough bowl. The company regularly runs double bread bowl promotions because they understand the cult following. When Panera executes properly, that tangy sourdough flavor and chewy crust create the perfect edible vessel for broccoli cheddar soup. The starter brings legitimate depth and complexity that most chain breads can't touch. But excellence comes with caveats. That same bread bowl turns into a soggy mess if you linger too long over your meal, transforming from crispy, chewy perfection into a structural failure that requires a spoon to salvage. The baguette served as a side can be hit or miss, depending on when it came out of the oven. Catch it fresh, and it's fantastic. Get one that's been sitting, and it's disappointingly tough. Panera ranks this low not because the bread is bad, but because consistency issues and the dreaded sogginess factor keep it from competing with breads that maintain their integrity throughout the entire meal. Cracker Barrel's biscuits and corn muffins land at number 9 as the Southern comfort bread that's caught between tradition and corporate cost-cutting. When you order a meal at Cracker Barrel, you choose between buttermilk biscuits or corn muffins as part of that old-fashioned country store dining experience the chain has been serving since 1969. When those biscuits arrive hot at your table, they deliver peak Southern comfort. Flaky layers, buttery richness, and that slight tang from the buttermilk that makes you understand why people get emotional about Southern food. The corn muffins bring their own charm with a slightly sweet, crumbly texture that pairs beautifully with Cracker Barrel's comfort food classics. Both options tap into genuine nostalgia for simpler times and home cooking. The problem is consistency has become wildly unpredictable. Recent reports suggest some locations have cut costs by reducing portion sizes or serving day-old biscuits reheated in the microwave, a cardinal sin in the world of Southern baking where fresh from the oven is sacred. Even worse, the complementary nature of these breads has become murky, with some servers requiring customers to specifically request them rather than automatically bringing them to the table. When you have to ask for the bread that's supposed to be included with your meal, something has gone wrong with the hospitality equation. Cracker Barrel ranks here because when they nail it, the biscuits are legitimately excellent. But too many visits end with mediocre reheated versions or awkward conversations about whether bread is actually included. Inconsistency is the enemy of excellence, and Cracker Barrel's bread service has become frustratingly unreliable. Number 1 is coming quick, so please subscribe and like this video, because apparently that's how we measure self-worth in 2025. Carrabba's Italian Grill's focaccia checks in at number 8 as the bread experience, where the supporting actor steals the show. This complimentary bread service features baked focaccia brushed with an herb and oil mixture that fills the table with an intoxicating aroma the moment it arrives. The herb blend combines garlic, rosemary, basil, and oregano into an Italian flavor bomb that makes you inhale deeply before taking your first bite. That fragrant dip carries the entire experience on its shoulders. Fans of Carrabba's bread service aren't chasing the focaccia itself. They're obsessed with that herb blend. Home cooks spend hours trying to replicate the exact ratio of herbs and oil, posting copycat recipes across food blogs and Reddit threads. The bread functions as a perfectly serviceable delivery vehicle. Soft interior, olive oil brushed crust, mild flavor that doesn't compete with the herbs. It's Italian restaurant bread that fulfills its basic duty without trying to be the star. Carrabba's has made bread and herb oil core to their table ritual, is baked fresh, and arrives warm, which counts for something. This ranks at number 8 because the bread knows its role and plays it well, even if that role is excuse to eat herbed oil with your fingers. When people talk about Carrabba's bread, they're really talking about that herb blend, and there's nothing wrong with being an excellent supporting player. Just don't expect the bread alone to blow your mind. It's the oil doing all the heavy lifting. Maggiano's Little Italy earns the number 7 spot with their warm ciabatta rolls, the bread that does everything right without being particularly memorable. These freshly baked ciabatta rolls arrive at your table with olive oil and balsamic vinegar, embodying that classic Italian-American bread service that makes you feel like you're dining at a neighborhood trattoria rather than a chain restaurant. Maggiano's regularly showcases these rolls on their social media, understanding they're a dependable crowd pleaser. The ciabatta delivers on texture, tender, airy crumb, with just enough chew to feel substantial, a light crust that gives way easily to your teeth, and that slightly irregular hole structure that marks authentic ciabatta. The rolls pair beautifully with olive oil and balsamic, soaking up the tangy sweet combination without turning soggy. Even mainstream restaurant reviews consistently call out Maggiano's bread service as a highlight, noting the freshness and proper execution. The nutrition listings confirm these are genuine ciabatta rolls, not some chain restaurant approximation. Maggiano's ranks at number 7 because reliability matters, even if it doesn't generate the same passionate fandom as more distinctive breads. You know exactly what you're getting. Well-made Italian bread that complements your meal without stealing the spotlight. There's no cheddar garlic drama, no rosemary theatrics, just solid bread fundamentals executed consistently across locations. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. Bread that makes you nod approvingly rather than gasp in amazement. Maggiano's ciabatta is the dependable friend of chain restaurant breads. Always there, always pleasant, never the most exciting person at the party, but someone you're genuinely happy to see, Arts. The Cheesecake Factory's brown bread powers into number 6 with a cult following so intense the brand rolled retail versions into grocery stores. This slightly sweet, soft honey wheat bread shows up at every table before you've had time to decode the phone book menu, and regular customers demolish entire baskets before their appetizers arrive. The bread hits that perfect sweet-savory balance, rich molasses depth, tender crumb that practically melts on your tongue, and a subtle sweetness that makes it dangerously addictive. What separates this from other honey wheat breads is the almost cake-like texture. It's softer and more tender than traditional wheat bread, with a sweetness level that walks right up to the line of dessert without crossing it. That distinctive dark color comes from molasses and cocoa powder, creating visual drama that makes it instantly recognizable. The bread became so beloved that Cheesecake Factory launched retail loaves and rolls through Winn-Dixie and Harvey's in 2018, eventually expanding to grocery chains nationwide. When a chain restaurant bread becomes a grocery store product, that's proof of legitimate demand beyond the restaurant walls. The brown bread ranks at number 6 because it's genuinely craveable and unique among chain offerings. Most restaurants serve generic white or wheat bread, but Cheesecake Factory created something distinctive enough to generate its own fan base. The slight sweetness makes it less versatile than traditional dinner breads. It doesn't pair with everything on the menu, but for fans who love it, that sweetness is the whole point. This is bread that inspires loyalty and grocery store purchases, which counts for a lot in the chain restaurant bread hierarchy. Outback Steakhouse's honey wheat bread ropes in at number 5, as the chain bread with enough personality to stand out from the generic dinner roll crowd. Often called Bushman bread by fans, this warm, dark honey wheat loaf arrives with whipped butter and immediately signals that Outback understands bread should be an experience, not an afterthought. The company includes honey wheat bread in their family bundle promotions, recognizing it's become synonymous with the Outback experience. The flavor profile separates this from typical restaurant bread. Noticeably sweet without being cloying, soft and tender with barely any resistance when you tear it apart, and rich enough that you actually taste the honey, rather than just reading about it on the menu. That dark color suggests pumpernickel, but it's actually honey wheat styling confirmed by multiple nutrition sources and longtime fans. The whipped butter spreads effortlessly across the warm surface, melting into the crumb and amplifying the sweetness. When Outback executes properly, this bread makes you understand why people arrive early, just to maximize basket consumption before their steaks arrive. The bread ranks at number 5 because it's distinctive and craveable, but it loses critical points if it sits and cools. Room temperature Bushman bread transforms from tender and sweet to dense and forgettable, a fate that befalls too many slices. The sweetness also limits versatility. It pairs beautifully with steak and savory entrees, but might feel odd alongside certain dishes. Still, when served fresh and warm, this bread delivers enough character to generate genuine excitement. It's not the most famous chain bread, but it's definitely one of the most flavorful. Romano's Macaroni Grill's rosemary peasant bread captures number 4 as the aromatic powerhouse that makes your entire table smell like an Italian villa. This oily, shiny, rosemary-salted bread arrives par-baked and finished hot, then gets torn by hand rather than sliced. A rustic presentation that reinforces the peasant bread branding. The moment it hits your table, that rosemary aroma creates an immediate sense of occasion. This isn't just bread service, it's theater. The texture delivers on the aromatic promise, crusty exterior that crackles when you tear it, chewy tender interior with irregular air pockets, and enough olive oil to leave your fingers gloriously greasy. Fresh rosemary gets embedded right into the dough and sprinkled on top with coarse salt, creating intense herbal flavor in every bite. The bread tastes like something you'd get at a high-end Italian restaurant, not a casual dining chain. Bon Appetit even featured this bread, noting how central it became to guest satisfaction, sometimes more memorable than the actual entrees. Macaroni Grill ranks at number 4 because they've created a bread experience rather than just bread. That rosemary olive oil ritual turns a standard table starter into something that feels special and indulgent. The company openly touted how important the bread became to customer satisfaction, understanding that sometimes the free stuff creates more loyalty than the paid menu items. The only thing keeping this from the top 3 is occasional consistency issues across locations. When the bread sits too long before finishing, it loses that just-baked magic. But when it's right, this bread is the kind of thing people remember years later. Olive Garden's unlimited breadsticks claim the bronze medal as the chain bread that literally defined endless bread in American casual dining. These soft, margarine-brushed, garlic-salted sticks launched with the brand's debut in 1982 and became a foundational pillar of Olive Garden's identity. The unlimited aspect isn't just marketing, it's genuine Italian-inspired hospitality, translated into bottomless baskets of carbs. The company calls it the spirit of Italian generosity. And for millions of Americans, these breadsticks represent their first introduction to unlimited restaurant offerings. The breadsticks themselves are deceptively simple. Soft interior that pulls apart easily, brushed with margarine and garlic salt while still warm, delivered fresh throughout your meal without you having to ask. They're not trying to be artisanal sourdough or herb-infused focaccia. They're straightforward, crowd-pleasing dinner sticks that pair perfectly with marinara sauce, Alfredo, or eaten plain while you wait for your tour of Italy. The texture stays consistently soft, the garlic salt provides just enough flavor without overwhelming, and the bottomless nature means you never feel guilty about reaching for another. Olive Garden's breadsticks rank at number 3 because they've transcended being just bread and become a cultural phenomenon. They're meme-worthy, they've inspired loyalty program perks, and they're genuinely the reason some people choose Olive Garden over competitors. The unlimited aspect creates a sense of abundance and value that turns a simple breadstick into an experience. Sure, food snobs might dismiss them as basic, but when you're 3 breadsticks deep and your pasta hasn't even arrived yet, you're not thinking about culinary sophistication. You're thinking about how genius it was to make these unlimited. Texas Roadhouse rolls with cinnamon honey butter stampede into second place as the bread service that's inspired retail spin-offs, social media obsessions, and lines out the door. These in-house yeast rolls get baked every 5 minutes. Yes, every 5 minutes, according to the company, ensuring constant hot, fresh supply throughout service. The rolls arrive with whipped cinnamon honey butter that's become so famous you can order just rolls and butter through the app at many locations without buying an entree. The rolls achieve near-perfect dinner roll execution, pillowy, soft interior that's almost cloud-like, slight chew from the yeast that gives them structure, lightly sweet flavor that complements the butter without competing, and that crucial hot from the oven temperature that makes butter melt instantly on contact. The cinnamon honey butter pushes the entire experience into addictive territory, sweet, spiced, whipped to spreadable perfection, and generous enough that you never have to ration it across multiple rolls. Together, the combination creates something that tastes more like dessert than dinner bread, which is exactly why people can't stop eating them. Texas Roadhouse rolls rank at number 2 because they've achieved phenomenon status. The retail minis available at Walmart and H-E-B prove demand extends far beyond the restaurant. People genuinely crave these rolls the way they crave specific desserts. And the constant fresh-baked supply means you're always eating them at peak quality. The only thing keeping them from first place is that they're not the most famous chain bread in America. There's one basket that's become even more legendary. Red Lobster's Cheddar Bay biscuits reign supreme as the undisputed greatest chain restaurant bread of all time. These cheddar garlic drop biscuits launched in the early 90s and were officially named Cheddar Bay in 1992, creating a bread phenomenon so powerful it's transcended the restaurant brand itself. These aren't just biscuits, they're savory, buttery, herb-flecked miracles that people will literally drive across town for without ordering an entree. The biscuits achieve a flavor profile that shouldn't work on paper but becomes addictive in reality. Sharp cheddar cheese creates savory depth, garlic adds aromatic punch, fresh herbs bring brightness, and a post-bake brush of garlic butter makes the exterior glisten like edible treasure. The texture balances crispy exterior with tender, fluffy interior. Drop biscuit style means irregular shapes with craggy surfaces that catch extra butter. Every bite delivers cheese, garlic, and herb in perfect proportion, while still tasting like an actual biscuit rather than a cheese delivery vehicle. The cultural impact sets Cheddar Bay biscuits apart from every other chain bread. Red Lobster turned them into retail box mixes that sell in grocery stores nationwide. Food bloggers create endless copycat recipes. Social media users treat getting extra biscuits as a personal victory. The biscuits became so legendary they've generated memes, merchandise, and genuine emotional attachments. They're free, unlimited, and impossibly craveable, a combination that makes them the gold standard against which all other chain restaurant breads get measured. Red Lobster's Cheddar Bay biscuits earn first place because they've achieved something no other chain bread has managed, becoming more famous than the restaurant that serves them. When your complimentary bread inspires retail products, social media devotion, and people who visit just for the biscuits, you've created something that's transcended restaurant side dish to become a legitimate American food icon. So there you have it. From Longhorn's forgettable wheat loaf to Red Lobster's legendary Cheddar Bay masterpieces, the breads that ranked higher delivered on what matters most. Flavor that makes you reach for seconds, texture that stays consistent throughout the meal, and that intangible quality that transforms simple bread into a memorable experience. The bottom-ranked breads? They forgot that complimentary doesn't mean forgettable. What do you think? Did we nail these rankings? Or did your favorite bread basket get robbed? Let us know in the comments.